In my time as a Task Force Artillery Liaison Officer, I was based in Bahria, the capital of Fuktree Province, and there was only 3 Australians in sector headquarters, myself and 2 artillery signalmen. We call them RT-SIGs. And our job was to check on our allies to make sure they weren't firing into the Australian area of operations without permission, and potentially wounding or hurting Australian soldiers. One night while we were there in sector headquarters, which was a 2-storey building, an old French colonial building, we were situated on the top story, and the Viet Cong mounted a significant attack on the town of Bahria from a couple of 100 metres away from the side of a hill, partially overlooking the town. And their target was obviously sector headquarters, where I was stationed with my 2 RD-SIGs. And the South Vietnamese officers who we shared that sector headquarters with decided that the best thing for them to do was to go down to the perimeter of the town and help defend the perimeter against the Viet Cong attack. Then the Americans decided that they were going to return to the safety of their own base at I think it was a town called Swan Lock, quite close to Bahria, but a separate town where they had a very strongly defended base. And that left me and the 2 RT-SIGs on our own at sector headquarters on the top story of this building. So we doused all the lights. We made sure there was no light showing anywhere. It was at night time, by the way, and things began to get quite hot. Small arms fire, rifle fire, machine gun fire, that sort of thing was beginning to hit the side of the building. And as we looked out into the dark through an open window, we noticed a rocket coming straight towards us. It looked like it was heading straight for us, but fortunately it just skimmed over the top of the building. The Viet Cong were very accurate. They were perfectly on line for the building, but just a shade too high, or I wouldn't be here today. And I decided that we had to get out of there, but I wasn't quite sure how, because there was no one, none of our allies were there to help us, and it was dark and we didn't know exactly where the enemy was. So I got on the radio to our headquarters at Nui Dat and explained the situation to them, and they had apparently been informed of our predicament already. I don't know who informed them. It was probably a South Vietnamese officer who did that, or one of the Americans perhaps. But anyway, I was told that just to sit tight, to not attempt to escape the building, and there were 2 Centurion tanks, John's tanks, on the way down the road from Nui Dat to Bahria to get us out of trouble. And but they were going to take about 20 minutes to make that trip, so we just had to sit it out until then. But finally, after what seemed like an eternity, one of the tank commanders came up on the radio and said, "Righto, we're in position and just outside the town, and we can see where the Viet Cong are firing from, and we're going to fire a couple of rounds of a round called white phosphorus, and which is a dreadful weapon. it's I won't go into the details of what it does, but when they fired these rounds, there were a couple of gigantic white flashes from the side of this hill, and great plumes of white smoke, and suddenly the firing from the Viet Cong all stopped. So the white frosters either hit them or scared them off. But either way, we were very relieved, and we were able to sit the night out with no further firing at us, and we went back to Nui Dat in the morning, or I did, and made my report.
Well, certainly the one where I was wounded was significant, but another significant one was that we were back in base. We'd been out on operation, and you'd go out for maybe two to 3 weeks. Because there were so few tanks, and there were 2 battalions of infantry, there wasn't enough tanks to support all the companies. So we got the infantry to go out for around about 1.5 to 2 weeks. Sometimes we were out for 3 to 4 weeks, and one company would go out, and you'd go out with them, and then they'd come back, and the new company would come out, so you'd stay with the new one. So eventually you'd get back into base, and you're sleeping in a bed again in the base, and in a tent, but in a bed. And we were back, and we serviced the tank and all that kind of thing, and we were all called on parade, and our officer commanding, and you've got a CO who's the commander of the regiment, commanding officer, and the squadron of tanks is the officer commanding. He's a major. Regiment is half lieutenant colonel, and the squadron is a major. And he called us on parade, all the guys that were there that weren't out in the bush, and he said, "We've lost our first bloke," and he was one of my best mates, and that really knocked me for a 6. And his tank ran over a mine and he was killed. You never forget that. But the things that I do remember, and when I do a lot of talks to various groups, is you remember the humorous things as well. That's a good part of it. And we had some good parts, some good times. But I remember that I had to do one mess duty, and the whole time I was there, thank goodness. And normally you'd be washing pots and pans or doing some awful job. But my mate, who's involved with this RSL, was one of the cooks. He said, "No, you can just be my roustabout, just help me, And he said, "The first thing I want you to do is go into the store and get the meat." And I said, "You mean the fridge? It's bloody hot in Vietnam." He said, "No, the store." And I said, "Oh, it's crazy." So I go in the store and there's all these boxes, and they stood about that high, about that square. And I bring it out, I said, "This is what you want?" He said, "Yeah, that's it. Meat." And I open it up, and there's a can in it, painted army green, of course, and marked on the side in white print, "Bully beef, 1942. We were eating tinned meat that the Second World War soldiers used to eat. Now, so much for the use-by date. This is 1968. So that was the first thing that I never forgot. And the other one was, we had a guy there he was our hygiene man. And his whole job in the base camp was to clean the toilet, showers, and grease pits at the mess, the officer sergeants and the OR's mess. Worst job, absolute shocker. But this guy was almost a conscientious objector. He said he'd never, ever fire a shot in anger. He was supposed to go over as a clerk, paid clerk, but they already had one, so he was made hygiene. And anyway, he'd walk around with his bucket and mop every day, and his SLR rifle over the other shoulder, but no magazine. So if anything happened, he couldn't shoot because there's no magazine. Anyway, his first major job was to clean one of the toilet blocks. Now, the toilet blocks was the engineers come and dig a great big hole in the ground with a bulldozer, or front end motor, and they put a cement slab over the top with about half a dozen holes cut in the cement. Then they put a bit of a building over, a tin building over the top. No partitions. You sat there talking to your mate next to you as you went to the toilet. And of course, no flushing. What you had to do is, after you went to the toilet, tip a bit of Lionel down them. You had a bucket of Lionel. But after a while, it started to stink a bit, the paper. So his job was to go around and put a little bit of petrol down each toilet, It was one big hole, remember, and just drop it in and it'd burn the paper and it'd take the stink away. Well, he put half a jerry can of petrol down. Well, you can imagine with all this crap down there, he tossed the match down. It went voompa. It blew every dunny off the concrete slab. There was paper, crap everywhere. He was all singed from the flame. Well, he get a ribbing after that from all the guys in the unit. But at the end of the day, when he went to come home, they gave him Squadron Soldier of the Year because he had the worst job and he never complained once. So you see the funny sides of things too. So yeah,
And I think he was doing this job because at least he was safe.
well, he didn't have to go on operation.
Yeah.
Because he was in base all the time. But it was a rotten job.
Yeah,
It
that's
was a
great.
rotten job.